Hi, everyone, and welcome to the second edition of the Creating Sanctuaries of Learning newsletter. I want to say, firstly, thank you for the warm feedback. It's been incredible to hear how you've been sharing our last interview with your colleagues. I really appreciate that. And if you're new here, this newsletter is designed to bring you the tools, strategies, and resources that you keep asking me for, including, connections with our favorite Dr. Amy Berry. So we're continuing our Driving School-Wide Engagement series with Dr. Amy Berry, but this time we're focusing on leading implementation. So starting with a clear vision, exploring how to build teacher capacity and sustain that work, and finally measuring the impact on student engagement in learning. Now, many of you attended the Rounds of Impact event we hosted last year, and a lot of you were inspired by Falconbridge Public School's journey with engagement. Today, I'm excited to bring back Dr. Amy Berry and introduce you to Chris Pine, the principal of Falconbridge Public School. Now, Chris began his teaching career in Western Sydney and has always been passionate about public education and the diversity it brings. Now leading the school where he was once a student himself, he's committed to driving student impact through the culture of both the classroom and the school. Outside of education, Chris is also a dedicated footballer, coach, and a mentor for athletes with cerebral palsy. So, yay! Thank you, Chris, for joining us, and Amy, so happy to have you here.
Thank you.
Now, Amy, I wanted to ask you, what does true student engagement look like at a school-wide level beyond just, having the engagement continuum posters on the wall?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, I think sometimes schools start there because it seems to be an easy way to get going, at least make it visible physically within a classroom. But of course, we know that if no one refers to these posters, then it's just kind of taking up space. So that's the trick then, making it into something that is consistently referred to within lessons and making it useful, making it earn its space there on the walls of the classroom.
Mm.
So I think, for me, we sort of know that it is coming to life and moving beyond that phase of just being a poster on a wall when we can hear people having conversations across the school about engagement, when they're using that language and not just the adults using the language, in the staff room, but when children and staff are using the language within lessons and in the classroom. And that's when we know that we're really starting to get somewhere in terms of having a shared vision for how we want our learners to engage in learning in the classroom.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy. I want to build on that now and ask you, Chris, how do you set the vision for engagement at Falconbridge Public School and ensure that it's a priority across the school?
Listen, our journey with engagement and and this whole investing, driving and using the using Amy Berry's model started with a conversation, and the conversation was with all the staff, and it sort of spawned from there. But what we do to maintain and keep driving that vision is to make it a school priority. So it is pretty much one of our strategic directions. So it's constantly being referred to, in strategic direction team meetings. It's constantly being adapted to the point where now we're sort of, we've got it in the classroom and we've got it as part of our reporting to parent cycle, which was very, very risky at the time, but it's paid dividends from taking that risk. But it's all about having that the model within your school, but then adapting it to your context and
Mhm.
being able to and driving it throughout the staff. And so, I mean, the staff really drove it themselves. I said, how did I support them? They supported me. I posed the problem, and they came up with the answer. They were, we had this, massive conversation, and from there, we currently have the the engagement, the zones of engagement, coupled with the zones of regulation that we have today. I mean, we're moving into PBL, and we're sort of moving it around the place and adapting it. And we even had a discussion about how to move it onto our playground to change our playground expectations. But that's a discussion for another day. So, but it was really driven by the teachers, and if you make it a priority in the school, and it was a massive priority for us, and we came up with videos and things like that. But also the teachers are there because Amy Berry speaks about having a partnership, and that partnership, and we've driven heavily into the teachers to figuring out, well, what role do I play in this, and what role does the teacher have in this engagement cycle, as well as that of the student. So it's really this with both arms working together to drive the vision within our school. I'm very happy to say it's working extremely well.
Thanks, Chris. I do want to say, like, I've definitely, worked with your school for a little while, and I have seen the true partnership between the leadership and the teachers, and how much your school has taken on Emmy's work and really adapted it, and changed things up based on what you are currently doing to suit your context. And to see your teachers like so enthusiastic about the model and developing, these videos to show the children about the different, I guess, levels of engagement. It was great. It wasn't you talking about how great it was your teachers enthusiastic. And the fact that you've aligned it with your strategic directions is just such a great process. Now, Amy, I wanted to ask you, what are the first key steps a leadership team should or could take when shifting school-wide engagement practices?
Yeah, I mean, Chris has just shared, it's such a good example to kind of dig into rather than me, going over the top of it. Like, this is a really great example. For one, I mean, he's just provided such a great model of partnership in action. As he said, I came to them with a problem and they came up with a solution. Well, I mean, what a great model for the teachers to then think about, all right, well, how can I apply that same thinking when I'm working in partnership with my learners? We're going to have challenges when it comes to supporting our learners. Learning is hard. And so what a great model for them to think, all right, well, how can I, instead of trying to fix their problems for them, my students, what about if I followed Chris's lead there and said, okay, I've got a problem, we've got a problem, and see what the children themselves might come up with as solutions to the problem. So I think I love that as, modeling of something that we would like to see, right through the school. And then, I mean, it speaks to his leadership as well, that he understands the importance of supporting his teachers, autonomy and their agency, showing them that he believes in them and they're in their capacity to solve these tricky challenges that we're having, that he doesn't feel the need to come in over the top of them and fix their problems for them and tell them what to do and how to do it. So it is a great example of partnership. And then the other thing that I picked up in there is, and this is the really important part, if we're going to move beyond this surface level, great, here's the continuum, here, let's put it on the wall, great, we're doing it. If we're really going to go deeper with it and realize the potential of it, then we need to help people to make connections with other things that we're doing. And so, you can hear him talk about connecting it in with their other initiatives and practices, language that they're already using in terms of PBL. So I think the schools that are really successful in pushing this forward are the ones that realize that's what needs to happen. We need to connect this in and integrate it in and embed it in what we're already doing.
Really good points there for us as leaders to think about. in terms of how do we actually embed this so that it's actually sustained. It's something that we're all working towards with that shared vision. So great, great, Chris. Great examples through your leadership. Can I ask you, Chris, what have been the most effective ways that you've built your teachers' confidence and capability to embed engagement in learning in their daily practice?
Well, to deal with, teacher confidence, it's all about believing in them and believing in the direction that they want to take it. And that was really the first step that I took, and really, handing the reins over and going, yes, I'm the principal and I have, I have the responsibility and all that sort of stuff, but handing the reins over, going, listen, this is yours and this is what you're going to do in the classroom with this. This is what you're going to do with daily. I can lead it, but I'm not in the classroom. You guys are in the classroom. So what does it look like for you? How does the student move along those zones? And then I talked about the role that each person plays, and then breaking it down further, which is what we did in strategic directions, and really making it. And so the team came together and made am I statements. So making it really, really easy, really user friendly in how you can use it in the classroom. So when it's not like you refer to it's not like you refer to a matrix and you go, well, this is the continuum, and this sort of thing. We've got am I statements. So am I doing this? Am I doing this? And making it really user friendly within the classroom, and being able to refer to it very quickly is something that is something that the teachers really like, because in a day's teaching in lessons, you're all about getting the content over, and then you want something easy to refer to, and so that was a big part of what we did, and make it really user friendly and really easy for teachers. But it was all about building that language. The language needed to come first. So, are you driving? Are you investing? Are you participating? And are you withdrawing? So, and having those four zones, and really driving that in everything that we do, in assemblies, in classrooms, in sporting events, and so we did it in every single aspect, and then giving that back to the parents and saying, well, this is what we use in the classroom, so that then they can use that at home with their students. In terms of, we looked at it, and this railroaded a lot of my PL on the day. Don't worry about it, but it sort of had to move everything else aside, because when you get on something meaty, and when you get on something juicy, you've just got to keep running with it. So we looked into the reporting cycle, and we looked into the effort scale as well, and the effort scale, and I will, I'll hold my hat on this, and I've had a lot of arguments with a lot of teachers, a lot of principals over this, and saying, oh yeah, but we've scrapped the effort scale and just given a word. So in a subject, or in English, in maths, in HSI, or whatever it may be, you are participating, or you are investing, or you are driving. So we have an engagement level. And we've just had the one, so we don't make it a continuum either, because we thought we don't make it a gradual, withdrawing, participating, in investing and driving. We just wanted the word there, because then that gives not only the students ability to go, well, how do I move along that? How do I better myself within the classroom? And this is really about giving it back to the students as well, letting them taking ownership of their own learning, and going, well, how do I move up there? And then having that ability, give that to parents, and then going, well, if you want to do this, start to do these things at school. But with the old effort scale, with the 1 to 5, what are we basing that on? Is there any sort of criteria in regards to that? And that's my biggest argument in that regard. And so that sort of epiphany really handed this sort of ownership over to the teachers, where they could use it and play with it in their classrooms. And they all have different sorts of adaptations of it, which is really great. Some have it on the desk, some have it on the wall, some have it on sheets, some have it on the posters. But it's all as long as it stays true to the to the overall theme and the overall continuum that we've made up at Falconbridge, then that's okay by me.
Hmm. I want to highlight there, oh, you're so passionate about it, Chris, and I think your engagement with it makes your teachers engaged, and the fact that you're getting your parents engaged in it is so powerful through the reporting system as well, because then you have that shared language. I also want to spotlight how student friendly your version of Amy's continuum is. So much so that I think it supports your teachers to be able to use it because the kids can easily use it. It's not just a copy and paste of Amy's with some pictures on it, but you've really like focused on I guess, the higher levels, more active levels of engagement. You've turned the phrases, the statements into questions, student-friendly questions. And even last week when I was facilitating instructional rounds, modeling a bit of a mini maths lesson with Maryland Public School and the Callahan Network, I used your model with them to model how, as a facilitator of professional learning, you can ask questions like, where do you want to be on the continuum during a maths lesson, boys and girls? How can your thinking buddy, your elbow buddy, help you to get there? And then checking back, and like they during the lesson they were joking around, but eventually they were like, oh wow, we're really investing in this, in this maths task. And I'm, get me back on track to their partner because I'm getting a bit challenged here or a bit disengaged. And we talked about how it's natural to be disengaged. It's something, Amy, you've taught me. Um, Maybe a part 3 of this interview series. We can talk about your next article. There's so much that I want to talk about.
Yep.
It's never ending. But yeah, so Chris, I just want to say, like, your work is what you've done it with Falconbridge is impacting other schools, like, and it's supporting the way that I facilitate and lead professional learning too. And so, coming back even towards the end of the lesson and asking the teachers and leaders in your session, were you able to reach that zone of engagement? If not, why not? Like, what would you like to do differently next time? And even, what can I do to better support your engagement? So trying to, as leaders, kind of model to our teachers, what can they do in their classrooms? And I think you're really modeling really well with your staff. So Amy, back to you. How can school leaders support teachers who struggle, with shifting engagement practices, especially those who may feel like overwhelmed by change and feeling like it's all too much?
Yeah, I think, I mean, one thing that we always need to keep in mind is that, teachers are learners, in the same way that our children are learners. Just because they're teachers doesn't mean they get to skip out on the hard bits of learning. I mean, that's just, they don't get to skip straight ahead to, transfer of learning, if we're thinking in terms of SOPA STEEP transfer or Acquire Connect transfer. They don't get to skip ahead just because they're adults or just because they're teachers. So recognizing that just like in any other classroom, your teachers as learners are going to be at different levels of readiness in terms of their understanding of this work, and also different levels of readiness in terms of readiness to engage with change and with taking on this work. And they're going to travel at different paces. I work with lots of different schools and networks. And the reason why I don't have a kind of off-the-shelf, one-size-fits-all model of PL is because it doesn't work like that. Every school is different. And then when you look deeper into each school, everybody is different in that school too. So I think, as a leader, we need to understand our learners and work with them at their point of need. We need to see ourselves as their partner in learning and in engagement and treat it that way. So, and I think Chris probably does an amazing job of doing that. And same as in our last interview, understanding the needs of their learners. You're always going to have early adopters and people who are ready to drive from day one.
Mm.
And sometimes I have schools worry and say to me, oh, we've got some teachers that, want to run with it and want to drive. Should we hold them back? Which I always find, interesting as a response. No, I don't know why you'd want to hold them back. I think they're afraid that they'll do it wrong. That, I don't know. But as I say, like, what's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to make a mistake. So what? Like that's part of learning. You need those people who are motivated and confident and really eager to get things going because they shine the way, the light for other people who need to sit back and see how it unfolds for other people first.
Mm.
So I think let them go. Identify who your early adopters and ready to drive people are, and really support them as best you can to lead the way. And let us all learn by their example. And then think about you will always, have people who are quite resistant. And then we think about how we approach our learners in a classroom, our children learners. Well, if they're sometimes they're resistant to learn too. So we don't give up on them. We don't try to control them and force them. We instead work with them to try to understand what the roadblocks are for them. What is it that's getting in the way? Generally, it is either a fear or an anxiety about something, doing it wrong, not being able to do it, having some sort of worry about the learning, or just feeling really like their tank is empty in terms of motivation and energy for change. And those are, very real things, but identifying what the root of the problem is and then working with them to try to address those challenges together is the best way, I think.
Mm. And again, I think, yeah, making connections with what Chris said earlier, having a conversation with staff, like asking them, like, what is the problem? Like, what is going on, and how can we work together to find a solution? So, Chris, did you find that you had like early adopters or champions of Amy's work that kind of got excited and ran with it?
Yeah, listen, I mean, there's so much out there when I started to look into engagement. I was flicking all over the shop, and it was quite it was quite a daunting thing because they all sort of say they're all sort of saying the same sort of thing. But the reason why I liked your research is that it was so user friendly, and it was there. It made sense. A lot of it, but you could see where how it could be implemented and how it can be implemented in schools, how it can be adapted, and how it can be contextualized. So that's why I've put all my eggs in that one basket. But that's why your continuum works so well for me. Um, in terms of how do I was this about autonomy, was it?
Mhm.
Yeah.
How do I deal with well that they already had that autonomy. They created essentially, teachers created it. So the autonomy to contextualize it and then use that in the classroom. Um, and yeah, I mean, there have been champions. There've been champions that know how to use Canva better than me. There have been champions that have been able to look at it and go, okay, well, maybe I like if it looks like this, and then and I'm the sort of leader that goes, well, just try and give it a go. And so that really empowered them to go, well, yeah, I can just try. You know, my boss doesn't necessarily think that I should do it this way. I should do it that way. So I'm going to try it. But then what we do is we go, okay, well, now, we need some posts, we need some pre and post data. You need to know whether this is working.
Mm.
And some of the trials have gone, yeah, they've sort of fallen by the wayside. And then I've sort of gone, well, this is working. And some of the other trials are like we have, there's I like the ones on desk, and they got the whole thing on the desk, and they got their goals in relation to the zones of engagement. I must send that through to you, Steffi, because that's one that I really love, so they can have it on their desk.
Mhm.
And that's one, and then going, okay, well, this is something that one of the other champions, or one of my other teachers is using. Try it, trial it. If you like it, you like it. If you don't, you don't. But I'm not about taking over that autonomy with my teachers. They need to have it, and they need to mold it and adapt it to make it work in their classroom and in their context. So I haven't. Oh, I'm going to touch wood here. I haven't really had too much of an issue, and I've had so many. I've had so many more champions than I've ever. I don't think I've ever had someone who's gone, oh no, I don't really like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
It's hard
Because
to
my way or the
really.
highway, Steffi, so
I don't know about that.
Well, and you bring up a good point though too. It's not just free range chickens, like we sometimes say. It's not like, okay, everybody just do whatever you want. What you're saying is, I trust you and I believe in you, and you have the autonomy to be able to make decisions about what you do and how you're going to do it. But I also have high expectations for us as a staff, that we are doing things that are making a difference. Now, sometimes we do need to try things out and then determine that's not really working so well. We thought it was going to, but it's not. And in that case, we don't keep doing it if we don't think it's working. We realize that, and then find something that is working. So I think that's the perfect sort of blend in terms of a leader for this work, giving them autonomy and the ability to make decisions, but also having high expectations for everyone within the school.
I think you nailed it, Chris, with the shared vision and understanding of what engagement actually means and what it looks like, and then giving your teachers the autonomy to make it work for their context. I think that's just such a great way to do this work and make it work in your school. And I would definitely love, and I'm sure this other schools would love to see examples of what your zones of engagement looks like on the desks, on the wall, on your post, just to get some inspiration for themselves.
at a cost.
So Amy, I would love to know, how can schools actually measure whether their engagement initiatives are actually working? What should they be looking for?
This is always a question that comes to me, especially from school leaders. And I get it, I mean, if you're going to the trouble of including it in your school improvement plans, which they often are, we need to have some way of making sure that it is having the impact that we want it to have. And it's tricky. I think the first thing is, take stock of the evidence that you are already gathering, often things that you have no choice in doing, their department things and whatever. So have a look at the things that you're already tracking and gathering. And, as a group, sit down and say, right, what does this tell us about the engagement of our students? Because there'll be something maybe in there that you'll be able to get some information about. But what's missing? What is it? What isn't it telling us that we might want to find out? So that's kind of the first step. Take stock of what you're already gathering and make use of what you're already gathering as best you can. And then the next step is around this. Well, what else do we want to know? What impact do we want to see from this work? It's a bit like writing success criteria. What is success going to look like from all its different perspectives? So, one thing you might think about is in terms of doing walkthroughs. What would it look like if we were really satisfied that this was having a positive impact? And when we walk through classrooms and through the school, what would we expect to see and hear from the students? What would we expect to see and hear from the staff? And so, designing a walkthrough protocol that can allow you to gather evidence that way. That's one way. You can do things like small focus groups with staff and with students, impromptu, asking a couple of questions to find out how their thinking has changed, how their confidence in themselves as a learner has changed, you know. Again, thinking about, well, what would we expect to see as evidence of a positive impact if we talk to our students about using the continuum. So I think don't be afraid to design your own methods of gathering evidence of impact. Don't just, rely on surveys or things like that that are already out there. Yes, they can be useful, but I think better to gather a range of different sources of evidence because then you don't run the risk of missing something that's there, but you don't see it because you haven't picked the right tool.
I love all of those ideas, and my head's already buzzing with inspiration. And especially the focus groups, I think to actually hear from the students themselves, which I know you did in those Teacher Magazine articles, which I'm going to link for everyone in the resources section. Actually talking to kids about their experience of, what is happening for them in the classroom around engagement and learning. I think what better evidence of impact can you get? And
Yeah, absolutely. But it's something that we don't often do.
Mm,
We don't often think about asking the kids themselves about the impact that it's had on them.
mm,
We try to get at it in all sorts of convoluted ways, often by we'll get them to answer these survey questions, or we'll observe them, or whatever, which is fine. But sometimes it's sitting right in front of us. Just ask them, ask them themselves. They have powerful voices and they have a lot to say. Even the youngest ones in our research study, they have a lot to say. They have great insights and they're really happy to share them. They're just not often asked to share their perspectives on things.
mm. Exactly right. I think that's a great point for us to all think about, in not just with engagement, but all of our initiatives, the evidence of our impact. Are we actually having the impact we want to have on our students? Why not ask them as part of our evidence? So thanks, Amy.
And the other things, just sorry, you've started speaking with your parents as well. I mean, here is another untapped source often of impact because they see their children outside of school, and often they can, I guess, weigh in on the impact that they've seen in conversations that they've had with their children about school, but outside of school in their attitudes towards learning or their emotions about learning. So I think here's another really interesting source that is often overlooked too.
Exactly, Amy. My last question to you, Chris, is what has been the impact so far of your engagement journey at Falconbridge in terms of, teacher impact, student impact? I know your reporting has changed, but what else have you noticed?
Just so our third strategic direction, which is moved from school culture to classroom culture, and that's really where we want to be getting our most impact here at the moment. But the way that it's changed, the students at the start of this year have come back much more settled. I think, and obviously, the zones have the zones. Our zones will have impact on that. But in terms of how is it, it's the language. It really is. It's about getting that language out there and being able to use that and not being afraid to use it in different and in every context. So, that's sort of the place in which we've come to. We've implemented it. We've sort of it's part of our reporting. It's part of all of our cycles. We're thinking about moving into PBL and all that sort of thing. But now what we really need to do is go back and go, okay, students, like Amy was saying, students, is it working? And then adapt it based on what the students say. So that's sort of the next step, and that's also about dragging them back into it, because it's very easy for something to go, okay, you have a big push behind it, and then for it to go, okay, well, and then for a leader to go, okay, well, then now it's sort of done. and then just stop it, and then it it sort of naturally just fades off. And so my next goal is to keep driving it, to keep it up. So yeah, how has it impacted? Well, it's impacted immensely, and every single facet. Not only at home in the classroom, but even out in the playground, they're starting to see this. They're starting to use the language, but they're starting to not only use the four titles, but they're starting to use some of that language below. But have we seen the massive impact of the end product? No, it's constantly going to be it's constantly going to be evolving. It's constantly going to be changing. So it's a very exciting space to be delving into, and one that I have an end goal of what it'll look like, but how we're going to get there, I don't necessarily know, and that's sort of the fun part of being a leader of a school. You sort of you know where you want to go, but you're not too sure about how you're going to get there. So no, we'll get there with our students.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Chris. Were there any final thoughts either of you wanted to share before we wrap up today about leading?
I just had a question to Chris about the parents. What was their response to it all?
So it was tried, and the first place we did it was with the reporting. So that's the first time that they really saw it. And the effort scale's been around since as long as I can remember school being around for. So it's a new way in that regard, but through the communication of the school, through the communication of myself within the parent conversations. They really jumped on board, and they all accounts is that it's working well, in at home, because the kids are coming home and talking about it. And then, as I said before, then the parents are able to go, okay, well, what can you do, and help out their students in that regard. So we've had zero negative comments. But the way that we've adapted, and the way that we've sort of looked at it, because one of the questions I asked of my teachers was, okay, and one of the questions that the parents had was, how is this, how can someone who can't necessarily, if you're neurodivergent kids, if they have learning difficulties, how can they show some of these driving and investing questions? So I took that back to my staff and said, well, what's your answer? And the answer is, we need to differentiate it. You need to talk with students. That's how we're going to get this. That's how we're eventually going to come to the best answer, is to talk to parents, to talk to the students, and say, how can this be adapted? How can this be differentiated to sort you, so that you can still be achieving highly, but not necessarily doing it in the typical way. So that's sort of the couple of responses that we had from parents.
And that's a challenging area. People don't get to that until they're deeper into it. At the surface level, it doesn't occur to people. It's when they've gotten deeper into it, they think, but what might this look like for this group of students? Now, to have that open dialogue with your parents, and to have the continuum as this kind of point for discussion about how you can better support their children, I think it's a great way of opening that door and saying, well, let's put our heads together and find the answer to this. So yeah, it's great.
Amy, we differentiate the curriculum, so why wouldn't you differentiate the way that students engage? So, and differentiate behavioural expectations. Like I'm a big believer in inclusive education. So, there needs to be that facet of differentiation across many aspects of school, and not just the curriculum based one.
Yeah, and it really was highlighted to me in the conversations that we had in our focus groups with the students. I can remember so many examples, of where they were giving really kind of important insights into how it looks different for different people. Because they're different learners. So I can remember in one focus group, one of the girls was saying, unfortunately for me, when I'm really engaged, I actually look disengaged. So I'm doing things like drawing and doing these things, and it's mistaken for me being disengaged. But that's how I'm helping the information to get in my brain, she's kind of saying. And then her friend right next to her and said, oh, I'm the total opposite. That's how you know I'm disengaged. You know, when I start drawing and doodling, that means I've checked out and I'm just not even listening. So it's very hard for a teacher to understand that unless we are willing to have conversations with the students and get to know them individually, because, you know, the completely different stages of the continuum, but with the same visible behavior of just, you know, drawing in your book or whatever. So I think that's interesting. And the idea of questions too. Just because children are not asking questions and putting their hand up and asking questions does not mean they don't have them. Many children, my own included, were quite capable of coming up with fantastic questions, and they were very curious children, but they didn't very often kind of dominate whole class discussions and put their hand up to ask those questions in front of the whole class. It wasn't in their nature, but you know, they were still invested in what they were doing.
And that's why teaching is one of the hardest professions in the world, because you know you do have to adapt this, you know, adapt whatever, whether it be curriculum or behavior or engagement, and you have to adapt it across all different aspects. And we're currently going through that journey of making our school more neuro affirming, but and that's an interesting space to be in, because it's, you know, you've really got to adapt and stretch your capabilities and what you understand as a teacher,
Yeah.
able to be able to figure out where these kids are going to best engage with the curriculum and best engage with the lessons. So that's what I'm currently working on, and it's an exciting place to be, but it's also it's at times it's daunting, because then you go, well, how do I give this over to my teachers, and how do I deliver it to my teachers and make it and make it, you know, sort of user friendly, but then, you know, not to overwrought them with all this information. So it's yeah, it's why I love my job, Amy.
Yeah. Oh, look. And this is where the partnership idea becomes the most important, right? If you just have an easy child who kind of behaves exactly the way that you anticipate that they're going to behave, and and they make their engagement very visible for you to see and easy for you to see. I mean, okay, then those are, easier, I suppose, learners to navigate with. But approaching it in a partnership with each child means I don't have to do it all by myself. It doesn't mean that, times 25, I have to, really dig deep and, work so hard to get to know each one of them, and it's all on me, and it's all, if I think about how I partner with the children, I don't have to know everything about that child at all times, because I see them as a valuable partner in their own learning and their own engagement in learning. And if I don't understand something, or I'm not quite sure, then I know I can turn to them as a partner and say, I'm not really sure what's going on for you right now. Can you help me out? They have insider information. So we would be fools not to use that and value that. So yeah, anyway.
On that, Amy, we would be fools not to engage with the parents who
Yes.
have so much information and so much background into the little humans.
Yeah.
And and if we've got a problem within our classroom that we're trying to fix, or we have an issue that we're trying to fix, it's working. It's getting that partnership with school and with home to really work on that together. And that was part of the overall ethos of me, and the school moving forward with the zones of with the zones of engage, was to really engage that parent aspect. But then that, as it's adapting and as it's unfolding, where we need to tap into, and we need to start asking questions of of parents and get them involved in the process as well, I think.
Absolutely. And I'll share one more thing. Sorry. I
Uh,
mean, something that has it always sticks in my mind because I thought it was just such a powerful way of approaching this kind of idea. And it was a preschool teacher that I was working with, and they, as a group of preschool teachers, they realized that they were having a hard time describing what driving looked like in their context. But like, to their credit, they didn't say it doesn't exist. Our kids aren't capable of driving. What the message was, we're not sure what we're looking for. We're having a hard time describing this. So we spent a long time trying to map it out and work together to really concept map it out. What does driving look like in your preschool classrooms? And with that information, then it was like, okay, we have the right glasses on. Now we know what we're looking for, and it's clear to us. And so then they all went off with the challenge of, all right, now I need to spot driving when I see it. Now that I know what I'm looking for, I'm going to look out for it. But one teacher really stuck in my head because she really wanted to challenge herself. And instead of just looking across the class, she chose one student who had a number of learning challenges. So nonverbal, had some other learning difficulties and challenges, and she made it her mission to really understand what driving looks like for that child. And I thought, it was, and once she knew what she was looking for and was looking very intently for it, she could spot the small steps that child was taking every day to drive her own learning forward, to influence the environment, to make it better for her as a learner. And it was such a powerful example for me because I love that example. And I don't care whether you're dealing with preschool or you're dealing with adults. It's such a great example of, challenge yourself to see how everybody is capable of driving their learning.
And
Oh,
it's so very important and it all comes down to knowing deeply knowing the students.
mm.
And I think that's what it's and that's sort of that's a big part of what we do here as well.
Mm.
I
Mhm.
really have loved this conversation, and I feel like we can talk for hours and hours, us three. Um, Amy and Chris, I love how you're talking about our neurodivergent children and how, we can look at the continuum and in terms of what can this look like for them. Especially having a daughter myself who is neurodivergent, to hear, that we're talking about how things can look different for them, and that's okay. And, it makes me really happy and my heart sing to know that, if she went to a school like Falconbridge, she would be seen and valued for her uniqueness. So I thank you for that. And I also feel like your partnership approach, Amy, that you're emphasizing takes pressure off teachers, us as teachers as well, to kind of be like, let's deeply know our kids, but like let's ask them. And it's okay if we don't know every little single thing about them, but you know, we're in this on this journey together to support them. So I really thank you for your time, both of you. It's clear from our conversation that leading engagement school-wide is more than just posters on the wall or good intentions. It takes a shared understanding and vision, in that intentional implementation and a commitment to really partnering with our students now. I'm thinking about to measure our impact on their learning, their engagement in learning. Now, if you're looking at practical ways to deepen engagement at your school, I highly recommend checking out Amy Berry's currently free Engagement Hub, which is a space where educators we can access insights, stories from the wild, as she calls them, strategies, and connect with others who are doing this great work. I'm also going to include Amy's latest articles in the Teacher magazine in the resources section of our newsletter. They're just too good. These pieces offer insights and student perspectives on engaging learning at school, where they've surveyed nearly 1,300 prep to year 12 students and conducted 45 focus groups with 158 students. So there is a lot that we can learn. And I'm excited for your disengagement article coming out soon. You
Oh,
better send
yes.
it to me, Amy, as soon as it comes out. So I just recommend that you take a moment to read them and reflect on how, our students' perspectives can really align with our own approaches to engagement, leading engagement across our schools. Thank you for joining us. I hope you found this useful. Bye.